So now that we know that the target web application is actually vulnerable to a time-based blind SQL injection, we know that all we have to do right now is exploit this vulnerability to get the data that we need. And we're going to do that by manipulating the time delay in here. Again, similar to what we did in the previous class, we're going to ask the web application questions like, do you have a table that is called users? If it sleeps for a certain period of time, then we know that it does. If it doesn't, then we move on to the next guess. And then once we discover a database name or a table name that we're interested in, we're going to guess the column name. And once we know the column name, we're going to get the username and the password, pretty much in a similar style to what we've done in the previous lecture, but there will be slight differences because, like I said, in the previous one, we were simply relying on changes on the page that is loading. In this example, the page is not changing at all, and we're simply going to be relying on the time delays to tell us whether a certain table or a certain user exists on the database. So if you go here to the cheat sheet, you can see that we have conditional time delays. And again, you have a different statement for each database engine. And let me explain to you how we can use these conditional time delays to extract data from the database. So we're basically doing a select statement, and we're going to use a case query or a case statement. And what we're saying in this, if or when a certain condition is true, then I want you to sleep for 10 seconds. Otherwise, do not sleep at all. And that would be the end of it. So you can see this is a very common way of writing conditional statements in programming in general. And this is simply just the syntax that PostgreSQL uses. So we're simply using a conditional statement. This is the way you write a condition in PostgreSQL using the case statement. After the when, you specify the condition. So on this, we're saying 2 is equal to 2, which is always true. Then we're saying sleep 10 seconds. Otherwise, sleep for 0 seconds. So basically, don't sleep at all. And this will actually be another way for us to confirm that the target web application is vulnerable to a time-based blind SQL injection. So we'll first ask it to sleep for 10 seconds if 2 is equal to 2, and we know that 2 is equal to 2, so it should sleep for 10 seconds. And then the next time I'm going to ask it to sleep for 10 seconds if 2 is equal to 1. And we know that 2 is not equal to 1, and therefore we know that that should fail and we should sleep for 0 seconds. And that should confirm to me that the target web application is vulnerable to a time-based SQL injection. So we're simply just going to say select case when, and we're going to specify our condition. So 2 is equal to 2. Then we want it to PG sleep for 10 seconds. Otherwise, we want you to PG sleep for 0 seconds. And then that's the end of it. And then we have to put this in whatever we're injecting our code. So in here, we're basically going to put it between the 2 bars in here and the 2 dashes, the comment. So I'm going to paste it, and I should have put a open bracket in here and a closed bracket in here because we have a full statement in here. So we have to enclose it between 2 brackets. So again, we hit enter and let's send it again. And as you can see, this is taking some time. So it should take about 10 seconds to load. And because it took 10 seconds, it's highly likely that it's executing my code because I'm saying if 2 is equal to 2, then sleep for 10 seconds. Now let's say if 2 is equal to 1, then I want you to sleep for 10 seconds. So that's obviously false, and therefore the web application should load quickly and perfect. As you can see, the response came straight away, which means that it's actually executing this part of the statement if this condition is true, and otherwise it's executing this part. So it's sleeping for 0 seconds. Therefore, we can use this very statement to extract a lot of information from the database. For example, we can simply say, I want you to select if 2 is equal to 2, then to sleep for 10 seconds, otherwise sleep for 0 seconds from users. So we're basically saying select a true condition, sleep for 10 seconds if that's true, otherwise don't from users. So if we have a table that is called users, we're going to sleep for 10 seconds, otherwise we're not. And this way we're going to check if there is a table that is called users. So all we have to do is go back to our statement in here, go to the end of it, and just say from users. Hit enter, and this is actually should be 2 is equal to 2 because we want this condition to be true. And then we're gonna hit send. And again, it seems like it's taken some time, which is a good indication that there is actually a table that is called users. So whenever you get a true statement, it's a really good idea to make that statement false as well, just to make sure that whatever you're executing is actually being executed and you're not just being biased about what you're doing. So now that we know that there is probably a table that is called users because of this statement, we're simply going to go back to the table that we have in here, which we are pretty sure that it exists, but I'm just going to make sure that I put a name that doesn't exist. And I'm going to double check that web application should not sleep for 10 seconds. I should get a quicker response time than 10 seconds. And this way I will know that the previous statement that I executed is definitely correct. So I'm simply just going to add la 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 to the end. And we're going to send it. And perfect. As you can see now, we got the response straight away, which means that whatever we executed in the previous statement, when we simply typed users, and then the web application waited for 10 seconds, that means that we actually do have a table in the database that is called users. So the next question that we're going to ask is, again, we're going to select case if the username is equal administrator from users, then sleep for 10 seconds. Otherwise, don't do that. Don't sleep for any seconds. So as you can see, we're basically using the same statement over and over again. We first had to build a statement that based on a condition, it either sleeps for a certain period of time or it doesn't. And then all we do is we simply manipulate that condition and monitor the amount of time the web application is sleeping for to determine whether this condition is true or not. So now we're simply just going to test if there is a username that is called administrator. So all we have to do is simply modify this condition in here, and we're going to set that to if the username is equal to administrator. Let's hit enter and let's see if we're waiting, and it looks like we are waiting. Now you can obviously change the wait time to 5 seconds if you don't want to waste a lot of time. That really depends on the web application. Some web applications are slower to respond, so having a slower response time might be a bit annoying and harder to determine the difference between a false and a true statement. But as you can see, based on the response, we probably do have a username called administrator. But again, just to make sure, let's just go ahead and change the administrator in here and just type something that does not exist, like administrator, and let's just add la 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 to the end, and let's hit send, and we get an instant response, meaning that there is no username that is called this. But as you saw earlier, we waited for 10 seconds when we used administrator like so, and therefore now we know that we have a username on the target database that is called administrator. So now the next goal is to actually get the password. And this is going to be similar to what we did in the previous example, with the exception of this new statement. So like I said, all we're doing is we're modifying the condition in here. And therefore, the next statement that we're going to run is going to be very similar to what we did previously. So we're checking if the username is administrator and the length of the password is greater than 1. So we're trying to determine the length of the password first before we can start determining the actual value of the password. So again, we're going to go back to our statement. We're going to come back in here and we're just going to say, and length of the password is greater than 1. So we're simply just asking the web application, is the length of the password greater than 1? If it is, then I want you to sleep for 10 seconds. So let's send it, and we should actually wait if what we're doing is correct, because the length of the password should be greater than 1. And as you can see, because we're waiting for very long, we know that it is greater than 1, so that's perfect. Now, if you want to confirm this, you can also do greater than 100 to make sure that, again, your statements are working right, but I'm not going to do that because I'm pretty sure my statements are correct. So I'm just going to check if the length is greater than 20. Now we're going to hit enter and let's send it. and we get an instance response. So now we know the length of the password is actually smaller than 20, but greater than 1. Now, again, as you can see, there's a bit of guessing in this, which could take a bit of time, but I've done it before, and I know the length of the password is 20. But just to confirm, I'm going to replace the greater sign with an equal. As you can see here, we're going to hit enter, and let's send it, and we should be waiting for 10 seconds because we're guessing the correct length of the password. We're saying, is the password length equals to 20? And as you can see, because it's taking 10 seconds to get back to me, we know that the length of the password is 20 characters. So the next goal is to determine that password.